So for the last couple days, I've had two of my kids home sick with influenza. Never a fun thing. I knew they were pretty sick, but I wanted to make sure that they weren't playing hooky. So I measured my fifth grader's temperature and it was 102.2. Now, I know even just saying that can make some people panic or worry that something bad's going to happen. But let me explain why I wasn't really worried about that at all. Fever phobia, or the fear of fevers causing problems or damage, comes from a historical misunderstanding about what happens during an infection. So when our body gets infected with a microbe, a virus, a bacteria, our body naturally mounts an immune response. And part of that immune response is creating a higher temperature to help us fight off the bug. Now, sometimes that's really, really high. In the case with influenza, some other viruses and other serious bacterial infections, those numbers can be pretty high, but they are our natural defense mechanism to help us fight things. So you might say, well, what happens if it gets too high? It doesn't cause damage? And the truth is it doesn't. And there's a reason why historically we've had this fever phobia. We used to not understand what was happening during infection, fever, and the aftermath very well. All we would observe, if you can go back 100, 200 years ago, was a kid would get really sick, they would have high temperatures or a fever, and they were never the same again. This happened commonly with measles. They get permanent neurologic problems forever, and people will call that brain damage. And so they falsely associated the fever or the high temperature as causing the damage, when in reality what was happening is the microbe itself can infect, in some cases, the brain or the spinal column. We call that meningitis or encephalitis, and that can cause damage for sure, but it's not the temperature itself. And that doesn't matter whether it's 102, 104, 105. There is not a number that causes this. So in my daughter's case, even if she would have had 104, 105, which I've had patients and my own children have temperatures that high, it never concerns me that it's going to damage them. When we have a fever, it's very reasonable to treat them for comfort. If a person's just feeling crummy, can't sleep, can't drink, can't eat, absolutely give them some fever reducer like Tylenol or ibuprofen to provide them relief. But I'm not necessarily aiming for a lower number to get them out of some type of danger zone. I didn't recheck my daughter's temperature that evening when she had her 102, giving her some ibuprofen. I think she felt better, went to sleep. But I was not afraid overnight that her temperature was going to go too high or that I needed to lower it. The reality is the fever is not harmful. It actually helps us fight infection. So there are cases where fever is a sign of infection, and there's other warning signs that would worry me. And let me tell you what those are. If a person has a fever and is short of breath, extremely worrying that there's something going on that's serious in their lungs. If they have a severe headache, if they have altered mental status, such as seizures, confusion, they can't speak correctly, or if they have abdominal pain, fever plus any of those things would be a serious, potentially life-threatening emergency, but not because the temperature is a certain number. So even if a person had 101 plus one of those symptoms, I would be very concerned. But if they had 105 due to influenza, I provide comfort, but I'm not really afraid at all. So hopefully during this influenza season, you guys can avoid that. But I know it's rampant right now. So if you do get a fever or your child gets a fever, I hope this provides you some comfort and some reassurance that they're not going to get brain damage.